Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems. Thanks for supporting the community. Remember why you started.
We believe in this opportunity to work in Web3, and people coming in will be a massive shift.
There's a lot of opportunities that are not, they're lost, and their people's skills and their what they're really capable of doing is not able to be shined through right now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are. Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems built on stacks secured by Bitcoin and probably multi-chain at this point. We have a very special guest today. I've been looking forward to this one since I got into the Stacks ecosystem during the Blockstack days. And we're going to talk to Brittany Laughlin today. Brittany is the chairperson at Stacks Foundation, and she's been involved through the ecosystem, through helping builders, through helping the accelerators come online for a few years now. She was there when mainnet first happened. She was there through the Blockstack days and through the early days as well. So, Brittany, I've been looking forward to this for a few years now, and you've been writing on recent topics, emerging topics like AI, Web3, Bitcoin layer twos, and we're gonna deep dive into many topics today, including the emergence of Bitcoin L2s. We're going to talk about ordinals. We're going to talk about the growth of Stacks ecosystem. We're going to talk about, we're probably even going to talk about just like how much interest there's been recently. I heard people at ETH Denver, it was pretty much a lot of ordinals, a lot of Bitcoin L2s, a lot of conversations like that. Before we dive into all of those conversations, how are you on this wonderful Friday?
Thank you for having me. I'm really psyched to be here. I think that this has been an amazing account to follow over time and just learn so much from. So I'm very honored to be here and be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. So you recently were promoted or gained a new position as a chairperson at the Stacks Foundation. Before we talk about that, just wanted to give everyone a shout out there, including you. Happy International Women's Day. So shout out to all the wonderful women out there. I told that to my wife and my little 1-year-old daughter this morning when we were making pancakes, and my wife reminded me of the day, so wanted to remind everyone. And then I saw Chindi; she sent out a tweet and mentioned all the wonderful, wonderful women that we have in the Stacks ecosystem. It's just amazing that we have so many types of different people in our ecosystem. I love it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and shout out to all the women out there. I do think that we have an incredible community um, of women, and even like the Stacks board now, it's all women board members, coincidentally, that are
Wow.
also part of the ecosystem. But I do think we have a really diverse ecosystem, and that means that there's a lot of women.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we talk about you as a chairperson, can you just rewind the clock and tell us, how did you learn about Blockstack? How did you learn about Stacks? How did it come to be that you are this prominent person in the Stacks ecosystem and Web3 in general? I the conversations I see you having at different levels with really impressive people. You've been around. You've seen the growth. Where did it all start, and how did you learn about Blockstack, then Stacks, and then eventually became the chairperson?
Yeah, well, sometimes there's this cool OG credibility. I feel like I do qualify in the OG. It's now been about a decade of being part of the crypto community. Back then, it was just called Bitcoin Tech. I was at Union Square Ventures. We invested in Coinbase at the seed stage. Bought my first Bitcoin when it was around $200. It just was like, oh, I'll put $200 in. What can I lose? So didn't buy enough, but really got started on this idea of this new economy, this new way of transacting online, kind of in like a borderless, permissionless way. And that got me hooked. So it was about a year after our Coinbase investment that we met Neve and Ryan, who actually started this project
Mhm.
called One Name, which was the early genesis of what has become Blockstack and then Stacks. So I got to meet them when there was just two people with this idea of like, how can we make Satoshi's vision come to life? That there should be parallel chains that can do other activities that support Bitcoin, and kind of using Bitcoin as this base chain to be able to do other things on top of. So we are now seeing this narrative get picked up in a major way.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's taken a lot of time to just build out the tech, the infrastructure. The whole Web3 ecosystem has been very essential in making the grounds fertile enough for these ideas to take flight and to be possible. So some of my OG-ness is just being around long enough, sticking through all the bull and bear markets, and just continuing to say, I'm not going to stop until we see this vision come to life, which is,
Yeah.
how do we have a permissionless, decentralized financial system? So here we are.
And that's a reminder, because I consider myself a Stacks OG, but we're going to have to go up. So that's level 1. Level 2 is going to be the real OGs like you.
Oh, gee, yeah. In some ways, it's like, oh, that's so cool, but also it's like, yeah, there's also just being around a long time isn't great, but it does mean that I've gotten to meet so many people who've done some really interesting things because they were just early enough. It's like I remember sitting in a room with Hayden from Uniswap, and he's sort of like whiteboarding the curves of what Uniswap would look like. And it's like, yeah, that sounds interesting. That's cool. But like being able to see people take their ideas and turn them into these really massive tools is it's just incredible. I mean, that's like my love of this industry is just it is permissionless. People can go out there and build stuff and get other global participants around the world to help them build it, to help use it. So I'm a Web3 maxi. I'm not like a particular chain maxi. I just am like, let's get more innovation out there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. We have a couple of chats coming in. It might be uh, the chat bots, but no, we have some cool ones. Mind Nation said howdy out there, and we have David. He said go zero and go stacks. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you guys have some questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll see if there's extra time to answer any Q&A. So how did that bring you to the Stacks Foundation, then being the chairperson of the Stacks Foundation?
Yeah, so I was part of the Blockstack team. So that was the name of the company that helped do the token launch. So we did the SEC qualified offering. I was with the team there at Blockstack. And then a part of that plan all along was to work on how we were going to decentralize the ecosystem. So there
Mhm.
was always a vision. We'd have a foundation, we'd have different organizations supporting developer tools. There's kind of a whole slew of things. It's an old blog post. You can find it. There's since been many updates of like, how are we doing at decentralization?
Mhm.
We're probably overdue for another one, but it's been going really well. But that was about 3 years ago. I left the Blockstack company and helped found the foundation. And the goal was really, how do we create a home for things like governance, core development, and grants? So, we do research and development, we do education, we do a lot of the things that are essential to get the technology out to more people. So for the 3 years, we've done so many different things to just help seed the ecosystem,
Mhm.
and really help more members come in and create new businesses or create things like the accelerator or things like trust machines. Like there's just all of these organizations that have sprung up, and we've just tried to be a center that continues to be a neutral player, helping people get the resources they need.
That makes sense. And what are just some of the top priorities? I know things keep evolving, crypto and Web3, and moves very fast. Sometimes I tell people take a break, but if you're away for 2 weeks, you might miss some critical things. Like the latest is runestones, and it's just been going parabolic with Leonidas and what Tio's been working on. I've been fascinated with the whole ordinal space. We will talk about that at some point. What's kind of like on the roadmap for this year and beyond?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing in our ecosystem is just Nakamoto. So this is the next upgrade. This is some of that elusive tech that I've said that's taken a really long time to build because it requires different infrastructure in other ecosystems. So some of the upgrades that have happened to Bitcoin have meant that there's new technology that we've been able to utilize at Stacks to be able to solve the read write problem on Bitcoin. So,
Mhm.
right now you can only sort of read Bitcoin state, but if you can actually use a different chain, like an L2 like Stacks, to write to the Bitcoin chain, that's the holy grail. That's the, hey, I want to keep my Bitcoin locked on the Bitcoin chain, but I want to use it in other applications without using sort of a custodian somewhere else. So this has been the dream. Right now, Nakamoto is getting voted on. So if you hold any stacks, please go vote. I think today is the last day, but we've had such great turnout. I think our community is very involved with the governance. So that's a huge priority of the foundation, is just to ensure that people are educated on what they're voting on. They have the tools they need to vote, and that once that vote goes through, that they're able to, see these upgrades coming. So the Nakamoto release is the next one. It's coming up in the next few weeks if this vote goes through, which I believe from some of the stats I saw earlier, it's on track. um, but that's huge. And I think with that is this year was also coming SBTC. So this is an easier way to use Bitcoin in more DeFi use cases, and there's a ton of excitement there. So we're really trying to just support the launch of that as well. Just being a provider of education and different tooling to developers in our ecosystem.
So Nakamoto is going to, I mean, I can't, people don't imagine like how many people are just, because I mean, it's going to put us on par with Solana, Ethereum. The biggest complaint right now is the block times, right? So waiting 10 minutes, it feels like, it feels ancient, right?
Yeah.
And man, how can you, when you just kind of look out on the 3 year or the 4 year cycle and the growth of the network, can you just imagine how this is going to just unlock just some new opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's builders who've already been on stacks and have been laying the groundwork. They, of course, have wanted speed, and it's always been hard because Bitcoin transaction times are slow. We're sort of connected to that chain. So these major upgrades coming with Nakamoto, providing that speed. One, all of the existing builders are very pleased that the speed will be there, but also it's attracted a number of new developers who haven't necessarily built on stacks before, built on Bitcoin. Maybe they've been building in other chains, and they just see the opportunity. Once you have that speed there, there's certain use cases that are more viable. So I do think it's great for existing people. It's great for new people coming in. And it also just happens to be at a time when Bitcoin is front and center. Like we're seeing this even from Wall Street with the ETF going live. That has a major microscope then on Bitcoin. Great. What's happening? What do I do with my Bitcoin? How is Bitcoin fees going to be sustainable over time? It's like all of this stuff kind of points to L2s. We've seen this in other networks. Stacks is the leading L2 in Bitcoin. And so I think that narrative is just capitalizing one on all the great tech and community we built, but also just this greater shift into looking at Bitcoin's potential.
Are you surprised with how much money has come into the ETFs and just how much liquidity is just being coming into the Bitcoin network?
I'm not surprised actually. I mean, I think this is having been in this space for so long, it's like I'm surprised it took this long for us to
Yeah.
get to this point because I do think it's like it's the most frontier in the financial sector. There's already global adoption of this asset. Wall Street's always looking for new ways to give people yield and return and exposure to sort of the fastest growing assets. And the fact that it's taken this long for the US to allow the approval, I think I would have, assumed it would have happened 5 years ago. But here we are,
Here
and I
we
think
are.
it's great. And so I'm very excited to see people get into Bitcoin.
No, absolutely. Brittany, you've been writing about AI, Web3, and some trends. If you don't know, Brittany puts out some really high content writing on likes and launch, and so it's a newsletter. And the latest one was Better Lives with AI. You put out this really interesting tweet that kind of got a lot of attention recently, and people started kind of commenting. And you said crypto gives people control of their money, AI gives people control of their time. What do you mean by that? And where do you see the convergence of Web3 AI, even on Bitcoin? And obviously that can happen now with stacks and different Bitcoin L2s.
Oh yeah. Having some allergies, so
I'm
excuse the
sorry.
tears. This is such a moving topic for me. No. Um, yeah, I think, I've been paying a lot more attention into like how AI is going to make an impact. And to me, crypto is like going to be the transaction layer of AI. We have a working group actually in the Stacks ecosystem, specifically thinking about crypto and AI and how these work. But to me, it just makes sense. One of the biggest drivers is just this like machine to machine payments. Like, how can machines be doing work on our behalf using AI? They're going to have to transact. They're either going to have to transact through traditional channels where they're payment processors, or they're going to transact in a way where maybe there is an existing, credit card system. So like models paying each other or agents paying each other. And so I do think that there's a lot more need for a decentralized financial system that doesn't exist yet. And obviously, to me, I'm like, it's going to be Bitcoin, or it's going to be layers built on top of Bitcoin. So I'm very excited about that. But I think that, as a individual, it's great. I can have more financial control using crypto, but now I want to be able to employ machines to do some of the work for me, to take responsibility for some things that are easy to automate and don't require me to be in the loop. Even things like participating in DeFi networks. It's like, great, I want this AI to manage my money for me. I'm going to give it specific instructions. I don't need to be sitting there clicking the buy button. I don't need to be sitting there connect my wallet button. How can I delegate to an agent that has access to my wallet to do that? And then I have an on-chain record of every transaction. I can see what was done and when it was done. So it's fully auditable, and it's really rewarding. So I just think like we're going to go in that direction. And that's just like the individual use case. I think that there's far more like business use cases that are going to exist there, but I do think it's really exciting. And my view is that it's actually going to take us in this place where we have a better lifestyle, because we have more control of what we want out of our finances, out of how we use our time, because we have all these tools at our disposal that we can use.
Yeah, that's I didn't when I saw that tweet, I thought that is interesting in that context. It gives people more control of their time. And that's the productivity we talk about, right? We gain productivity. I mean, we all now, I mean, a lot of people in crypto are usually at the forefront of trying different tools and stuff. So, you have the Geminis, the open AI, and the chatbots. And I know Benet said he gave a hello to everyone. And hey, Benet, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. Benet was one of the first people to tell me about using AI agents for just daily transactions, and like ordering something from Starbucks and using agents for that. And I was just kind of applying it through the lens of, okay, well, if you have this process at your business and you want to automate that, how would you do it? But it's just completely exploded, and it's just your imagination is your limit on this. And some of the MVPs I see people putting out on the crypto Twitter, I think, wow, that you could spin up an AI agent now with a couple clicks of a button and write some code, and it's just happening way faster. I mean, it took us decades and decades to get to this point. Is that just kind of like the convergence of all these technologies coming together, and then you have the agents with Web3 as well? Is that where we're going here, Brittany?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so. I mean, I think it's like we've hit a maturity in crypto that it's like it's easier to use, it's more ubiquitous, there's liquid markets. You're not like going to crash the market if you sell $1,000, dollars of Bitcoin. So I do think that it's taken a long time for some of these foundations to exist,
Mhm.
but that lining up with AI and these open models that are now basically free. It's like you can go use Claude, you can use Gemini, you can use OpenAI, or even for 20 bucks a month, you have access to all of this horsepower that you couldn't use a year ago. I think it's incredible, and I think we're just seeing so many experiments and so many people utilizing it. And to your point, it's like it can be simple things that you're like, oh, review my email for me. But even get to know you're like, hey, I want to build something on Stacks. Maybe I know a little bit of clarity, but I need more information. You can use AI to assist you in helping you solve your problem faster. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go spend 12 weeks to go learn this, you can get the pieces you need immediately and put them together. And so I think that's really powerful. And then taking it even step layer, like further than that, it's like, okay, like what are the next ways that you can build this business or grow this ecosystem or reach out to people at scale in order to help find others who want to work with you or build with you. So that's stuff that used to be like, well, it's a function of time. How much time do you have? It's like just more ways that you can leverage your time more productively
Mhm.
to build things. So I'm very excited about that.
No, I think it's awesome. I know you probably can't say if you have any ordinals or if you don't have any. How how surprised have you been with just the rise of ordinals? And like we mentioned at the start here, a lot of people came back from ETH Denver, and I talked to a bunch of folks, and I mean, the conversation just gravitated around Bitcoin L2s and ordinals. And I mean, it's just been a wave of entrance of interest, people coming in, and it's just awesome to see, I gotta say.
Yeah. Well, I'm very curious to hear from your ETH Denver experience, what's like the key thing that people love about ordinals because, kind of seeing the rise. I remember when people first were like, ordinals, these are the thing, like buy one now because you're early and like that's all that matters. It's like to be early.
Yeah.
But I think they've evolved and they've gotten a lot more sophisticated and it's not just like, oh, copy paste an image, make an ordinal. Things are a lot more meaningful. I think that it's grown the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's made people very excited. Like there's actually transactions on the Bitcoin chain that mean something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious for you what your biggest
Well,
takeaway of the
so
excitement.
I wasn't there, but so what I can say is one of the things I was talking to, I'm gonna butcher their name, but it's the guys at I think Ordlyfy, where they're pretty much the Figma of ordinals, and
Yeah.
they built this platform where you can drag and drop stuff. We were talking, and this was before ETH Denver, but where this is kind of going is, that first batch, the first wave of ordinals was you get it under sub 10,000. Okay, get it under 100,000. Well, we have our collection under 1 million, right? So there were those conversations, who's first, who's second. And so now we're past that. And the other thing is, so I always say Bitcoin taught me about macroeconomics, inflation, global macro, how the Fed works, how does money actually work, how does banking work with fractional reserve banking. Bitcoin taught me all those things that no, none of my college courses or high school courses taught me. What ordinals taught me. Now I knew about UTXOs, but I never had a deep dive into it. And I think a lot of the people in Bitcoin probably didn't deep dive into UTXO either, because now they're realizing Bitcoin can become the monetary layer because the way the Satoshis work, they are actually traceable, which is the thing I always wondered in the back of my head. How is a Satoshi traceable? But with ordinals, where you inscribe on one Satoshi, now I get it. And so that's where I think ordinals has actually allowed a lot of people to learn about like the inner workings of Bitcoin, right? So like the rare Satoshis that you can buy, like I don't even know if people are still like, most of the conversation is around the PFPs and the collections, but the actual rare Satoshis, that market continues to emerge and boom, but it's just not like at the top of the conversation. Then you kind of have like the next generation of the ordinals. And this is what TO and the pizza ordinals are working on, the ninjas, right? Like having more utility with your ordinals, right? The Megapont has done a really masterful job at this too. And then obviously Runestones is going to be the next evolution of BRC20. Who knows what Leonidas and Casey are going to work on next after that. So it's just from my point of view, the evolution is happening faster at a faster clip, because I thought, okay, it'll slow down and then people get used to it. But it's like, no, what's next? What's next? Let's keep pushing while it's hot right now. So that's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, mine was very similar. I think it's one of those, I saw the early NFT booms, like, oh, people are buying these apes. That's so dumb. And it's like turning to, oh, you could buy like multiple houses with an ape now. So yeah, I think that there's always this like sort of, okay, is it going to be just a fad? But I do think the utility piece we learned from that last NFT cycle was so essential to put in there and really build real community and prove real value. And so I think we're seeing that with ordinals, is that people are bringing these really incredibly creative projects that people want to have participation in and ownership in. So I think you kind of nailed sort of like the top things that I've heard as well. So
The
I'm very
last thing
excited
I'll
by
say,
ordinals. Yeah,
I've been
it's always one of those, probably don't have enough, probably.
Yeah, I go back and forth on this. I'm like, oh, I should buy some more of these Mega Punks or Node Rocks or this the Bitcoin frogs, and then I'm like, I don't know. I want to kind of hold on to my Bitcoin, and then I'll see
Yeah.
Megapont and Pixel Coin where they're going to have this inscribed service, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe obviously I'm bullish on all of it all, but it's just like, you don't have enough time in the evening either to like go through all this stuff and decide how it all works.
Yeah. This is when your AI agent, you'll just delegate like, hey, find me the coolest ordinals. Just
Totally.
send me 5 choices a day. I'll tell you which one to go buy it when it's at its reasonable price. Just have it do your bidding, because I'm with you. I have 2
That'd
young
be
kids too.
awesome.
So all those degen hours that people are like up late
That'd be
trading,
awesome.
I'm trying to get some sleep. So yeah, it's cool to see.
The concept of agents, like even like if you wanted to say like something that's like you've always wanted to do as a collection, like AI agent, go build me this ordinal collection and launch it and
Yeah.
market it on crypto Twitter for me. That would
Yeah.
be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think some people see that as a downside of AI, like, "Oh, we're just gonna get flooded with all this junk," like, kinda like you get spam email, like, "Oh, we're gonna have just so much junk there." But I think what will matter is community and, like, real people, building things that are meaningful to them and trying to find others who have that same, that it resonates with. So, I do think good ideas will continue to grow. It will just give the creator more leverage. It's not like, "Okay, I have to be good at designing art, and I have to be good at tweeting, and I have to be good at writing, T's and C's, and I have to be good at, Discord moderation." So I just think it'll be a lot easier for people to get projects off the ground and then be able to scale them and probably add team members and stuff. But just
Yeah.
those initial 40 steps they need to take, maybe it's more like 2 or 3 steps. So artists can have better access to just creating good ideas and then get the support they need.
No, I think so. I think so too. Like, I know there's always some fear out there, like, well, are the AI agents coming for my job? They will replace certain things, but then also the pie will grow, right? Like there will be jobs for prompt agents. There will be
Yeah.
jobs for writing Bitcoin script with an open AI agent, So that's where we kind of always the conversations are happening right now, right? People are fearful of it, but then there's also another cohort that's super bullish on, well, I get to free up my time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those you wanna experiment with in the same way people are worried about, like, blockchains and, like, what are they gonna do, and, like, this is gonna disrupt the whole monetary system, and people aren't gonna wanna use US dollars anymore. It's like, "No, that's not." It's like a yes, and. It's like, "Yes, and we're gonna,
Well,
have
and
crypto."
it's kind of interesting, right? Because they're like, oh, well, this is the end of the US dollar. Well, we took the US dollar and we put it on the blockchain. So is it really the end of it?
Yeah, it's the
and
evolution.
yeah, and I think Ray Dalio's coming around to the idea of Bitcoin.
Yes.
You wrote about the future of content monetization in the age of AI. I think it's kind of similar to the topic we're just talking about, and how just the creation of new types of jobs in the economy will exist, and how content will exist in the future. Can you just kind of touch on that briefly, and just give us a sense of like where do you think content monetization, where does it go in the age of AI?
Yeah. Well, I was talking to some other people in the actually in the stacks ecosystem. So JP, he's a professor at Princeton, very forward linking, and we were talking about AI and its impact. And sort of his belief was that the earliest um, places that we're going to see friction, and we already are, is large content producers. So, like, let's say the New York Times, like they create all this content. It costs a lot of money for them to do that. They monetize it by eyeballs.
Hmm.
If I can just go to AI and ask for any of the news that I want, and the AI just scrapes New York Times once and then serves all the data to a million people through AI. New York
Mm,
Times is not happy that a million eyeballs are not looking at the New York Times anymore because that's how they monetize.
yeah.
So there will have to be a system in which the AI model is actually compensating the New York Times for use of its information or data. And so there's already lawsuits, suing AI, OpenAI, like, hey, you're using our data or our likeness, and we didn't give you permission. So how those transactions will happen, his belief is like, well, we'll see crypto payments would be a great way to be like, okay, every time there's sort of a query in this realm that's, accessing the New York Times information, we can just pay them back, or pay them a certain amount. So maybe these content companies are no longer thinking about eyeballs, but they're thinking about almost like an API, like how many times does my
Yeah.
data get pinged? So those tiny, tiny micropayments would be a lot better if they were using something like a blockchain. It also then wouldn't require every single content company to have a contract with the model. It's like instead they could say, okay, what's your wallet address, and we'll just pay you an amount over time, instead of saying like, okay, we're going to invoice you and pay you at this day of the month and these taxes for these states and things like that. It's just like simplify it, make it accessible to everyone um, in the system. So there's kind of that belief on content monetization. But on the other side, there's also this idea around like content creation. And it was kind of a separate post around like, what is the future, Disney going to look like? And it's like, wow, people can create AI ideas that weren't possible. We used to have a team of like 200 people in order to like make a small movie. Instead, what if you could use AI to get like 80% of the way there? You kind of can orchestrate the music, you can orchestrate the animations, you can write the script, you can distribute it in all these different ways. So I do think that we're going to enter a realm where creativity is going to be way more important than how efficient you are at getting something done. You're going to outsource that part, but your creativity and like the stories that matter are going to be incredibly important. So kind of divergent things. This post, yeah, that you have highlighted here is more about
Right.
content companies, and any website that monetizes through eyeballs, like they could be in trouble with AI, skipping. Even Google, we've seen this. Like,
Right.
why would I search on Google when I could just get the answer I want through an AI? But Google doesn't get any AdSense or paid per click or anything in AI.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be disruptive.
Well, and that's where the debate between Google and OpenAI comes from, right? Because Google is saying, well, we've been at the forefront of AI, but the AI products, they are not great at all, because the people who are leading the AI stuff, they're also leading the legacy business, right? And so this is why it is hard to disrupt yourself, and this is why only a few companies in the history of humanity have done this well, because it's really hard to say we know this is the future, we need to leave that behind and move towards the future. But it's like we make so much money from this one thing right now today, where the future, who knows, it can be next year, next 5 years, 10 years. That's the thing about the future. It happens faster than you think it's going to happen too.
Yeah. Well, what's funny, I was using the Gemini, which is Google's like OpenAI
Yeah.
model the other day, and I was asking it for some like more real-time data on something. And it says, sorry, we don't provide this from specific websites, but here are the ways you can search for this on Google. And it literally gave me 2 prompts to copy and paste into Google to search. So I thought that was the first time I ever saw that. And I was like, that's pretty genius, like,
Yeah, it's
great,
like
we're gonna just drive you. This is all this AI is just a funnel back to Google.
good try, guys. Good
Yeah.
try. Um, I was gonna pull up, I couldn't find it, but one of the conversations happening right now, like you said, is and this is probably like the future of where content AI Web3 goes. Everything becomes a data layer, right? We've talked about that, and even in my, I work full time, so even we have a platform, but most of this data layer is finally starting to come to the forefront with AI agents, where this data that you have is very important, but it's kind of been slow. So we do have an API, but a lot of people don't know how to use APIs, pull the data, display it in a way that even makes sense and represents the data that you would want it to, who originally composed the data. So this kind of gets me thinking, because what Reddit and I think Stack Overflow is doing, they have separate contracts with OpenAI to provide the data to train the data, right? And so they're saying, look, I get it. Our business is going to be disrupted.
Yeah.
Let's get on this horse and start writing right now and be the data content layer.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's that exact issue of, paying content providers, and the old business models are gonna go away. So, actually, USV, we were investors in Stack Overflow. It's like being part of that journey, and what an incredible resource that's been on the web. But why would I go to Stack Overflow, um, if I could just go to AI, an AI, model? But they've been also at the mercy of Google forever. Like a
Right,
large
right.
number of people, the way that they got to Stack Overflow is they went to Google, and then, the first result was usually something like Stack Overflow. So it will be interesting to see how those change over time. And how those business models will, if they stay in the business, Stack Overflow, are they going to just stay there? I do think that there is something to that. It's hard for individuals to train a model. Like, I'm not going into OpenAI and saying, hey, OpenAI, let me teach you about stacks. Like, hey, let me teach you about clarity. It's only one direction. It's only like you can pull information. You can't push information back, if you're like an average person. Whereas things like Stack Overflow or Reddit, like anyone can contribute and be part of
Yeah.
those communities. They can give back. So I do think that we will see an evolution in how people think about building models or training models. Now, even with like the big scandal of Google, and some of the images coming back, and they're like, George Washington was not a female, even though AI is trying to be unbiased, and
So
like tell us it was. It was like,
you may see
no,
my face on a Nazi body.
yeah, like, this is just factually incorrect. So
Yeah.
how can we do that? So I do think there will be some pushback of people wanting to say, like, how do I give feedback to the model in a way that can benefit both me and then like also other people around. So we have not seen that yet. I don't know how they'll manage things like that, but I do think it'll be important.
Something you said too, this is where we've like done some experimentation to like start to train our own models. And I even think, for even if you know how to do it, you're still going to need an easy way to do this thing. And it may just like kind of manifest where whoever does kind of the first ones to do it, just like, if you want to just like have an easy way, an easy interface, and just put some queries that you would normally do, right? And just kind of tap, or I was going to say tap into like, or just type your natural voice, and it just takes all that content, and it's feeding, the power of Web3 too, like where we're all, and maybe Farcaster might be the answer to this, where we are all using decentralized tools, but we can all receive those micropayments as content creators, because and that's why we created Zero Authority, because we thought there should be a way, if you collaborate with someone, you should be able to own your history own that collaboration and not just like, sign up for a LinkedIn or sign up for this platform and then kind of be renters, right? You should be owners and be able to control your data. I think that, and this is probably like where I learned about it. I think Stacks was probably the most prominent place. And we used to say, the user owned internet, and that was kind of slogan for a while. I and then Chris Dixon recently had his read write own
Yeah.
read write own book published, and I actually went to Barnes and Noble to get a book, and they were out. So,
Wow.
that's when's the last time I've been to Barnes and Nobles to get a book, and they were out. I thought, wow, this book must be really popular. I got to read it. But like the concept of like ownership in the digital space is coming back, and like if you as you look out on the horizon, do you think it'll take a while, or do you think people do truly want to own their digital rights or digital ownership?
Yeah. It's a question we've thought a lot about at Stocks because forever, yes, user-owned internet. Um, and a lot of times though we get the pushback, like, what does that mean? Like no one's like, I'm using the internet today. Let me own these pieces. So I agree with it. I'm 100% for the user-owned internet, but I do think it's like hard to grasp about how people think about that. But so much of our lives are now online. And I think we've seen people get rewarded for having ownership in the real world of like, you own real estate, you own property, you own cars, like you own businesses. These are ways in which people make their living and they have time flexibility because of those. They have financial freedom because of those. I think on the internet, it's the same thing. If you're producing something of value for other people, how do you capture some of that value back? How do you pay people for some of that value? If you're operating outside of these big monolithic like marketplace structures, it's like I'm not buying information from you on Etsy, but maybe you're doing something of value and I want to be able to pay for some of that value that you're providing back.
Mhm.
So I do think it is shifting this mindset of like if you're creating on value online, how do you easily capture it? You don't have to have a middleman, you don't have to have this big like heavy structured 10% take rate from other people, but you're just trying to transact in a new way. So I do think that that's the value of the internet. And I also think that's the value of crypto is just making it seamless. Like I could send you a payment right now. I didn't need, no credit card processor, no in between. We can just transact in a very seamless way. So that's the part of the ownership economy I really believe in. And with like our data, like I don't know how valuable my data is, but I do know that there's probably things of value people want would want to trade with me on. So
Yeah, yeah. And shout out to Paula, Web3 crypto, super bullish right now. AI blockchain future. Definitely. Thanks, Paula. Appreciate the comment. Thanks for
yeah.
tuning in today. Uh, we're gonna we're coming to the end here, and this has been a really great conversation. Brittany, you're gonna have to come on either. It's I don't know what this summer may be ordinal summer again. It may be
Or
big.
no summer.
It may be Bitcoin DeFi summer again. Who knows where it's going? It may be Web3 creator summer too. So we're going to have to uh, uh, be around for that one, and you'll have to come back. As we wrap up here and get towards the end, wanted to talk about the Stacks ecosystem and the growth of the ecosystem, and just like the full participation from like everyone contributing. If I could, if I had another hour, I would give out all the shout outs to everyone who's supported us, Zero Authority, and who supported like the Stacks Foundation, Hero, Will, Mitchell, you. There's so many people, so many people. With the time that we have left, can you share some thoughts on how cool has it been to see like since mainnet? I mean, even before when we had the app mining programs, and then coming
Yeah.
to yeah, go app mining. Dan Trevino and I talk about that a lot, and Brad and Grant. But how cool has it been to see this rise of the ecosystem within Stacks? And then something I see other chains trying to do this, but they've kind of like went back towards centralization. Like there's such a focus on decentralization in our ecosystem and like giving this entity ownership, that entity ownership. And the hardest thing to do is to say, I'm going to step back and I'm not going to take this over. I'm not going to put governance there. I'm going to let this just naturally evolve.
Yeah.
All those things, like touch on all of them, all in aggregate.
Like, how much time do we have? Yes. Well, this
2
would
minutes.
definitely make a great
No.
follow-up conversation. But no, I think it's been fantastic to just see like the technology has resonated. There's some people who caught on to it early on and they're like, I see it. It's not exactly what I need. It's not at the speed I want early on back in the app mining days, but they built things. They were able to bring them to market and find other like-minded peers and continue to build and find what the ecosystem really needed. Excuse me one second. And yeah, I think it's been just incredible to see like what a innovative, kind, collaborative community has been built. And even things like working groups, that's been a huge success over the past year. It's like making it very explicit, like what needs to get done. Anyone can join. It's all public information. Everyone can be part of it. And allowing people to contribute and also spin up their own working groups. So it's almost like voting with your feet of like, hey, we need better data systems. Let's like go build it. And let's work as a team to do it. Because I think it can sometimes be hard for community members to say, hey, this thing's really important. Who do I tell that to go do this versus saying like, who do I work with to make this happen? And so I think that sort of flip of decentralization of everyone felt ownership of the Stacks ecosystem. It wasn't just a, hey, foundation, go do this on our behalf, but like, hey, foundation, we want to go do this. How can you help support us in getting the word out? So that was not a small undertaking, and it seems like a small switch, but that's really been a game changer for our ecosystem. And I think, and I hope it's like empowered many people like you to say like, hey, I'm putting my stake in the ground. Here's what I care about. Here's what I'm going to work on. And it helps attract the right resources to what you want to do, attract the right people and get others excited. And you can kind of build these really incredible communities, these incredible platforms to make these things possible. So I do think decentralization is tough, but it has brought out the best in people. It has attracted many people. And right now, Stacks is just going through this great renaissance as well. There's so many new people entering the ecosystem, looking for their place to contribute and help. And I think that also is kind of unique in crypto. A lot of times when brand new people show up, they're just like, when Moon. But I feel like the community here is very like, what can I build? What's
When
missing?
Moon and when Lambo.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's like, that's just a very different type of vibe. And I don't think we're trying to, see more of that. We want to see like, great, what can I build? How can I do this? Or, hey, I've been thinking about doing this thing. I think Stacks would be a great place to do it. Point me in the right direction.
Totally. And before we wrap here, there's just been a lot of emphasis on just like the Bitcoin L2 space in general. What are some things you're seeing out there that just makes you bullish on Stacks is headed in the right direction? Bitcoin layer 2s will be a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think there already are a thing. I think there's like just a lot of growth. Even anyone who's ever used Lightning, it's like, is it an L2? Is it not an L2? It's like, look, you're trying to use Bitcoin in a new, interesting way. And I forget, maybe it was, I think this was like a Bitcoin conference. They were kind of talking about like, think about money and you have different ways in which you purchase things. It's like, maybe if you buy a coffee, you use cash. Maybe if you buy dinner using a credit card. Maybe, if you're buying a mattress, you're paying in installments. Like maybe if you're buying a house, you use like multiple tools. And it's like thinking of the value layer of Bitcoin, there's multiple ways people are going to want to use it. Using it in apps, using it in a small transaction. So I think things from like Lightning to like really large, slow, trusted transactions you can get are very important. But I don't think Bitcoin does that very well today. So you need another layer to help do that. You need the speed of a second layer. And also just the cost of fees for running anything on, full transaction on Bitcoin is quite expensive. I just don't think that's very realistic to think that most transactions need that high of a cost. So these L2s just bring the speed, the security, and the ubiquity of Bitcoin And so I'm just like very bullish that those are going to be big. And I know Stacks is one of, a few L2s that exist, but I think there's even that. I think there's going to be room for all of us to succeed because they're just such different use cases available.
Yeah, that makes sense. Brittany, this has been awesome. We're so thankful for your time today. And if you guys are so inclined, check out Brittany's writing. You write on Twitter a lot, and check out the newsletter. The newsletter is phenomenal. Likes and Launch, and you can see the Likes and Launch Substack.com. And just thanks so much for stopping by today and giving us an update on all these things and talking about Web3 and AI and crypto. And those are all of our favorite topics. So we could talk hours about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This was phenomenal. And yeah, definitely find me on Twitter and let's keep this conversation going. I write because I want to talk with more people about these, sort of things I'm learning about. So let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Well, thanks. And you have a great weekend. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. You guys have a good one. Bye.
Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems. Thanks for supporting the community. Remember why you started.